Chapter 62 to 65. Ha! That'll bring Otto scurrying back. Well done, lad, crooned Rainies, after we'd finished our explanation of why we had returned from the tourney much earlier than expected. He'd explained just why Gwaine Hightower had to be horrifically injured in a joust before we'd arrived at the manse because I'd been very vocal about wanting to know. Alison's storm of grief as Gwaine was born from the field almost, made me rethink my plan. I had spent the entire trip back alternating from guilt-stricken and ready to end it all to hardened determination to see Alison pay. I'm blaming the hormones again. Still, I had been moved enough to offer Girardi's aid. The seven know that Melas does not even come near my maester's skill even if he was leagues ahead of that idiot Runsider. I was also glad for Joffrey's earlier warning regarding Valerian family drama once more. Lena and Laenor might not be screaming anymore, but they were still occasionally casting suspicious glances at the other, and Lena was clutching her son to her chest as if she feared someone might appear to take him away. Joffrey and I had taken the safe option of sitting next to Rhaenys to avoid seeming like we were supporting one against the other. "You caused Ser Gwaine's accident?" asked Lena from the corner. Joffrey turned to her and nodded. "You know why, Lena. Should Alicent win and crown Aegon, it won't just be Rhaenyra's children that are quietly removed," he told her, crossing to her and lifting Lucerys out of her arms. Lucerys fussed momentarily before settling again, and Joffrey watched him like he'd hung the moon. I winced as our agreement of neutrality was shattered almost instantly. Laenor scowled and I shot him a look. He had the good decency to flush in response. "And killing Gwaine helps? Bringing Otto Hightower here helps?" Lena asked, gazing at him as he cradled their son, as if desperate for some kind of explanation. "Now I haven't been let in on this plot of yours, but I'd assume Otto being here is the point," Rhaenys said. "The High Tower might as well be painted green. There would be no touching Otto on Battle Isle." Rhaenys wasn't fond of the cloak and dagger schemes, but that did not mean she was not adept at them. She was every inch Corlys equal in politics and most other things. That she'd guessed Joffrey's scheme did not surprise me. "Well, we will have to see if Otto takes the bait now," said Joffrey, rocking Lucerys back and forth as the child let out a stream of babble. An errant leg kicked his stick away and Lena bent down to retrieve it. When she came back up, she had controlled her expression somewhat. "I cannot keep up with you all at times," she sighed. "Rhaenyra is off playing with the faith, Joffrey is arranging murders, and Laenor is fighting duels for his honor." "Hardly by choice," said Joffrey, tartly, and I sighed in annoyance. "We have been over T-. And I am committed. My princess has ordered me and I have obeyed," he said, cutting me off. Rhaenys made a small sound of amusement before leaning forward and clapping her hands on her thighs. We all jumped and turned to face her. There was a nasty smile in place, and I was reminded that Otto had done as much to sabotage her as he had Corlys during his reign as Hand. "So," she said, and I could see where her children got their occasional predatory grins from. "What is the plan?" "Ser Gwaine is badly injured. He shouldn't die, especially not now that Rhaenyra has offered Girardi's aid, but it will give Alicent an opportunity," he began. We all stared at him, intent on his explanation, his little sulk about being forced to plan it over or vanished in the face of his terrifying mother-in-law. "Viserys is likely to give in to Alicent's request to have Otto return, if only to attend to his son." "That was a nasty accident you arranged," I said, for the benefit of those who hadn't seen it. "I would have thought him dead from the sight of it alone." "Indeed. I could not tell you beforehand, I wanted your reaction to be real, yet I allowed Alicent to bait me. It was ill done, the bet will stand out in her mind. She will be paying attention to me now, if only for a while," he said. "I will not collect on the bet, of course. That would be rather crass and would only draw more of her ire." I bit back the response that he should, just to rub it in. "Once Otto is back, I expect him to be on his best behavior. He won't want to risk Viserys' wrath again. His goal will be worming his way back into politics and likely seizing control of the Greens from his daughter. This is when I will launch the second part of my plan," Joffrey continued to his enraptured audience. Lena was staring at him with her mouth open, Rhaenys looked suitably impressed, and Laenor, nope, still looking like a kicked puppy. "It better be good." "Alicent will be all over any suspicion that her father died on Rhaenyra's orders," Laenor interjected, tone sulky. "Alicent will suspect us regardless of how her father dies. She will believe it retribution for Corey," Joffrey told us, shooting me a meaningful glance. "Which it is. I have gone over my reasons. Regardless," he said, cutting me off again. "We need Viserys to believe it wasn't us. We need Lionel Strong to believe it wasn't us. That is what I am planning for." "I see," I said. It made sense. What did you have in mind? I'm afraid I won't be laying out my master plan, he said, much to everyone's annoyance. At our reactions, he frowned. Like Renera today, I need you all to react in a consistent manner. The more you know, the more weight you will give certain events. Viserys will be looking at you all when Otto dies. I dislike not knowing, but your reasoning makes sense. I'll abide by it, grumbled Rhaenys. Then added, for now. For some reason he looked quite nervous at that pronouncement. Lena raised a hand to his shoulder and chuckled, whispering something in his ear that had Joffrey blushing. I swallowed my jealousy once more, but it seemed Laenor was not quite as adept at doing so if the way he stood and stormed from the room was any indication. I followed him before Lena or Rhaenys could. Or, gods forbid, Joffrey. They're sleeping together, he told me in a hurt voice as I caught up with him. They play happy families with Daemon's son. That was the whole point of marrying them, Laenor, I pointed out. Why did you suggest it if you were going to react badly to it happening? His subsequent blush and downcast gaze told me he hadn't thought it through at all and that it had been as Joffrey theorized, he had just wanted Joffrey close and bearing his name. I groaned at the realization. Laenor dash. I know. I shouldn't be jealous. I shouldn't take it out on Lucerys, he said, the threat of tears in his voice. Mother made that quite clear. I'm not asking you to deny what you feel, I told him gently. He glanced up at me, surprised. We agreed to sacrifices when we made our agreement the day we were married. Did you ever have that same talk with Joffrey? No, he replied, sounding miserable, and I sighed. His much larger hand enclosed mine and he brought it to his lips. I blinked as red made its way across my cheeks. Is this what it's like for you? Not with you, I told him, conscious of my musing on their relationship recently. I feel the same way about her though. He didn't need to ask who I meant by that, he just pulled me close. I buried my head in his shoulder and we stayed like that for a little while. What a pair we make, I mumbled, and a small laugh caused his shoulders to shake. I shall speak to Joffrey and make my peace with Lena, Laenor said finally, releasing me and looking a little happier. And you should speak to her again. I do not wish to make her uncomfortable. She has made herself clear, I said, and he gave me a pained grimace. Now, I do believe your mother mentioned something about a meal earlier. Corlys arrived to eat with us and gave us an updated report about the goings-on within the keep. Gwaine was out of immediate danger thanks to Gerardis and Melos. He still may die from his wound going bad or any number of complications, but he was stable. Alicent was not taking it well. She'd reportedly grabbed Daeron and Aemond, then sealed herself in her room so that the court would not witness her grief. I felt guilt churn in my gut once more, as much as I hated it. Gwaine was decent sort of guy. I got the feeling he was always slightly exasperated with his sister's scheming, he was just happy she was queen and his nieces and nephews royalty in turn. Then I felt bad for feeling guilty. I did not know how Gwaine died in canon, but I very much doubt it was when he supported Rhaenyra instead of Alicent. Gwaine's reluctant sword would take my life as surely as any enthusiastic Green's blade. And anything was worth finally getting rid of that snake, Otto. After the meal, Rhaenys and Corlys retired together and Lucerys was handed over to the maids to be dressed and readied for bed. It left the four of us alone, and suddenly I couldn't tell if the kids had gone absolutely wild or if I was very nervous. I'm lying, I'm pretty sure it isn't the kids. Well, said Joffrey. Today has been eventful. We need to dash. I apologize, said Laenor, interrupting whatever Joffrey had been about to say, eyes on his sister. I lashed out. I should not have done. We've all said things we regret to one another recently, said Joffrey, his eyes softening in response to Laenor's apology. But I wanted to dash. I do not regret them, Lena cut in, causing Joffrey to clench his jaw. I have spoken only the truth. You told me that I was spending too much time bedding Joffrey. Laenor cried. Lena opened her mouth to respond and promptly got interrupted by Joffrey before they could start bickering once more. Enough, cried Joffrey. I am not your nursemaid. I do not exist to be pulled between you every time you argue over something. Both of them flinched at that and directed guilty looks his way. I grimaced as he glared at them both until each looked away and then turned his gaze on me. We have a bigger problem than whose bed I sleep in as it happens, he said finally, and I did my best to sink into the furniture once more. Viserys is well aware of the true father of Lucerys. You jest, said Lena weakly. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. Joffrey, if he knows Alicent does. No, I croaked, and she turned her attention to me. I begged him not to reveal it. He agreed as long as I remembered I was a Targaryen and not a Valerian. When did you find out? Laenor asked, eyebrows furrowed. I would warrant she's known since we returned, opined Joffrey, and I nodded, grudgingly admitting he was right. By the 7, Lena murmured, her breath coming fast. By the 7. What are his intentions? Laenor asked, and I was gratified to hear some worry in his voice for all that he claimed his dislike Lucerys. Does he wish access to Luke? Does he intend to expose him? He's using it as blackmail so that I am on my best behavior. No running off into wars or openly fighting with Alicent, I told him. But he doesn't have anything to blackmail you with. Lena burst out, eyes on me. He has a truth that would destroy me. Right, drawled Laenor, suddenly amused. And as we have all established, she doesn't care about you in the slightest. And what is that supposed to mean? She demanded. I opened my mouth to cut them off only to close it again when Joffrey caught my eye and gave me a solemn shake of his head. She has told you what that means herself. Laenor bellowed. Curiously, in response to that, Lena turned to look at Joffrey like a lost puppy instead of responding. We have spoken about this, Lena, he said. I will not lie to you. I'm lost, I said, wanting some semblance of control when it came to this conversation. We are referring to my interest in Lena, correct? We are, replied Joffrey, focusing on Lena. It would be so much easier if she would spend time with you when I was with Joffrey, groused Laenor, and even I choked on that a little. What? Even Joffrey said the symmetry was pleasing. I suspect both Lena and I were the same color right now. I dropped my face into my hands, despairing and embarrassed that we'd even managed to get to this topic from an argument about Viserys. Would you agree to such an arrangement, Rhaenyra? Asked Joffrey, frustration in his voice evident. I almost didn't want to reply. It was too mortifying to admit that I would, but a small hope this wouldn't blow up in my face forced me to nod. Then I flinched as Lena let out an explosive breath. Truly? She asked in a small voice. I had thought I destroyed all possibility. When she called you a whore and kinslayer, Laenor helpfully informed me. Happily for him, the murderous look Lena threw him was one of annoyance at an interfering sibling and not an actual promise of murder. Yes, truly, I said and managed a rueful kind of smile. It seems I am quite taken with you still. Despite the insults. The smile I got at that inspired a broad, happy one of my own as my heart sped in my chest at the possibilities it brought. Excellent, we have finally arrived at a solution for our personal lives. Now perhaps we can finally discuss a way to negotiate the fallout from Viserys revealing what he knows about our son, growled Joffrey. Court was afire with whispers as Otto Hightower made his way through the hall. He'd aged considerably, I noted, in the decade he'd spent banished from court. Once dark hair streaked with silver and much less of the talented knight he had been once in his frame now. His green eyes, the eyes of his daughter, were still as keen as ever though. It was not his sword I needed to fear but his mind. That mind had made him the de facto ruler of the 7 kingdoms for nearly 6 years after all. Not bad for a second son, even one born to House Hightower. It still made me bitter in the extreme to think of it. Jaehaerys's steady decline had started soon after he'd given my grandfather to the flames of his pyre and the old king been all too happy to start handing more and more power to his hand. As the illnesses and mental fog each took their due from him, only Viserys could have matched Otto for influence over both the capital and the small council. Viserys had done nothing of the sort, of course. He was still in hysterics that he would take the throne ahead of Rhaenys. Joffrey wasn't the only one she low-key terrified, and in those early days, Viserys had been convinced Corlys or Rhaenys would raise some kind of rebellion in turn. The fact that Corlys had raised his fleet during the council itself was not reassuring in the slightest. Even less reassuring was that the only dragon Baelin's line had at that point was Caraxes, which meant Viserys was relying on Daemon defending him. Honestly, I'd be terrified too if my last line of defense against a fiery death was Daemon Targaryen. When Viserys had ascended to king, things had continued as they had done under Jaehaerys's twilight years. Otto took most of the important decisions and Viserys went along with whatever he decided, much in the way I imagine Robert did with Jon Arryn in that future that would not happen. In fact, the only one fighting Otto had been Daemon. Daemon, who considered himself his brother's heir and responsible for smacking down uppity hands. Or perhaps Otto merely insulted his haircut at one point, it was hard to tell with Daemon. Otto must have been on top of the world after Daemon had been banished and Alicent had married Viserys. His daughter the queen, his most hated enemy, cut off from what he desired most, and most importantly, Hightower influence ascendant in the face of an all but banished Valerian family. And then it had all gone wrong for him in the space of a year. Aegon born and Viserys keeping me as heir. That had to have stung. I was only heir in the first place because Otto had pushed for it. Then Corlys and Daemon had allied and forged their conquest of the Stepstones. A victory there would push the Valerians to yet new heights of power and give Corlys a hell of a lot of control over shipping in the Narrow Sea to boot. Shipping House Hightower relied on greatly. It would have ravaged Otto's pride to pay Corlys tolls. He'd reacted by preventing any meaningful aid reaching Daemon and Corlys and by making it his goal in life to discredit me. Viserys had not cared about the former, but Otto's attitude to me revealed by some well-timed theatrics on my behalf. Viserys had banished him so fast he'd barely had time to collect his belongings. Stuck in Old Town, he'd had to watch as Alicent took over as the sole Green leader in King's Landing, and he was relegated to an advisor, his schemes at the mercy of his daughter. Otto was an old-school misogynist, of the belief women should be quiet, supportive things. Seen and not heard. That their only duty and purpose in life was to pump out babies. I cannot imagine how much it hurt that his daughter led the Greens and not him. I cannot imagine how smug he was now, knowing she'd fouled it all up and had been forced to come to him for help. Your Grace, his voice was smooth as he bowed low to his daughter and Goodson. Memory of it castigating me over the years caused me to shudder. I come to hear news of my son. Lord Hightower. Be welcome in this court, please accept my invitation to stay in the Red Keep until his recovery is complete, Viserys intoned. Otto bowed again. I would be honored, Your Grace, truly. Please do not take offense when I say I hope my son's recovery is swift, however. At the little joke, many in the court chuckled and I wanted to scream. Even Viserys' lips quirked up at that. I take no offense, Lord Hightower. Truly it is my most fervent hope that Ser Gawain recovers with haste as well. I watched as Alicent's smile became a bit strained at that. Interesting. With that out of the way, Otto began his mingling. I tracked his progress across the court as I set to my own politicking. Even if most of my time was spent fending off questions about my babe with a stick. Many people already wanted to know whether there was likely a royal marriage up for grabs or whether it was already decided. At least I did not have to worry about a last-minute decision to marry them to Lady and Lord Nobody. Viserys had always made it quite clear I had the honor of planning their future matches and dealing with the consequences should the match prove disastrous. Given that my children would be dragon riders and their spouses would not be, I was pretty sure they'd be fine with their eventual partners. Your Grace, Otto Hightower said, voice mild and yet conveying how much he'd rather have me dead than have power over him. I stamped down the small heart attack his sudden appearance caused and forced a smile to my face. Lord Hightower. Welcome to King's Landing. How goes the day? I asked, voice pleasant and not at all forced. Well enough, he replied. My daughter tells me that you are to thank for my son's life. Maester Gerardis is skilled, my lord, he is the one that saved your son's life, I said, false modesty suffusing my tone. It would kill him to feel indebted to me, but then again, I doubted he actually cared if Gawain lived or died. He wasn't even the spare after all. He could be relegated from tool to dead easily enough. I thank you all the same. I'm told Grand Maester Melas was entirely inadequate. Bait. Steer around it. I could not speak to the skill of the Grand Maester in healing, I replied diplomatically. He smiled broadly then, as if acknowledging my avoidance of his little trap. I must admit I have sorely missed all of this, he said after I did not engage in conversation once more. It is pleasant to be back in King's Landing, even if it is for such grim reasons. Truly all here wish Ser Gawain a swift and full recovery, I said warmly. Ser Gawain would be back to Old Town once Otto had met his fate. I am glad that the heir to the Iron Throne is so generous and warm to my own kin. Perhaps I might seek your opinion on a certain matter? The change in topic had my smile become strained a little. Please, Lord Hightower, I am happy to help in any way I can. He beamed at that and it was almost genuine. I do wonder if I could your opinion on this business about war with Dorne, he asked and I froze without meaning to, mind searching desperately for where this had come from. There had been some call for war with Dorne in the aftermath of Daemon's final goodbye, but that had died long ago. So where had he gotten this from? Dorne is desert, I said finally. Still half destroyed from years of being burned in the aftermath of Rhaenys' death. All we will find in war with the Dornish is death and dishonor. I shall bear that in mind. My apologies, Your Grace, you are looking rather pale. Do your children trouble you? I would not wish to distress them. My hand found my stomach and the lives that grew within. If Alanis was right, and I did believe she was, I was fast closing in on the halfway point of my pregnancy. Still smack bang in the middle of the second trimester and suffering from pronounced symptoms that usually were a good indicator of twins even if I could stomach food without the threat of meeting it again now. Mostly. I'd even developed that weird little line along my belly. Along with itchy and swollen feet, ongoing weight gain, my still intense cravings, the really fun mood swings and the ever-present need to know where the nearest privy was at all times. They still fluttered away in there. Mostly they did it in the morning and at night, but sometimes they decided to have a party during the day just to spite me. I wanted to meet them, I wanted to hold them, I wanted them out and in my arms, and that want scared me. My children are better than well, I replied, tone harder than I intended. They are dragons and not so easily distressed. Oh, I understand, Your Grace, but it remains fact that both your mother and grandmother struggled in birth. Died in birth, he replied, tone so falsely sympathetic I had to literally swallow my rage. At least rage at Otto was better than fear. He was right. My daughter worries so for you. She was quite distressed to learn you would not visit Melos at all. Otto was continuing, well aware of my anger and fear if the nasty smile in place was any indication. I, myself, was quite distressed to learn you were relying on these new midwives. Truly, I wonder how appropriate that is. They are trained by my own maester. Gerardis is one of the finest healers the Citadel has ever produced, I am told. And my midwife has the experience of more babes than she can count backing her skills, I boasted, enjoying his brief look of chagrin. I would warrant my birth will be easier than many. Even with twins. We can only hope, Your Grace. We can only hope. Then he gave me a small bow and disappeared into the crowd, shaking hands, and greeting those lords he knew from his handship. What a bastard. A smooth bastard though. Every inch the danger I know him to be. If anyone could rescue Alicent from the hole she dug herself into with that duel, it was him. It was why I had to kill him. Instead of dwelling on his cheap shots, I sought out Lord Corlys and his wife. My thoughts drifted to their daughter as I searched the small crowd, and a smile touched my face, when I couldn't have fought if I'd even wanted to try. Since Laenor had managed to push the issue in his own ham-fisted manner, Lena and I had actually managed to sit down and have an honest conversation which did not end in a screaming match. She had kissed me. I wanted to giggle like a maiden at the memory of it. Your Grace, murmured Corlys with a solemn nod as reached them. I hope your friend has his ideas in order, because he could well rescue this mess. All three of us watched as Otto greeted yet another Dove Lord with an exclamation of surprise and delight, clapping a hand on his shoulder and introducing him to a hesitant Green. Although I suppose that didn't count really, all Greens were hesitant these days. Otto, though, was fully capable of reinforcing that wavering support. Such grim faces. Otto is less than nothing, murmured Rhaenys, her good humor today evident in a teasing smile. I could always pick a fight with Alicent to cheer you both. Wife, please do not, chuckled Corlys, and I allowed myself a smile at the thought. It would be fitting revenge. She was always so keen to taunt me regarding my children. She half sounded like a child pleading for the latest toy, and I had to cover my mouth to hide my laugh. Save your taunting for when we've beaten her, Rhaenys. It will be all the sweeter, Corlys told her, also struggling to hide his smile. Speaking of my children, where are they today? I took me a moment to realize Rhaenys' question was addressed to me. Lena is at the manse, Laenor is training, I replied easily. And where is my Goodson? She asked, earning herself an odd look from both Corlys and I. Honestly, her tone was warm and happy. She hadn't even choked on the word Goodson. Given that he had been the subject of Laenor and Lena bellowing at one another just a week or so ago, I was extremely surprised. He's a clever man. A good man, she said defensively when I continued to look baffled. Have you seen him with Lucerys? He dotes on him, I said, smiling at that. Now that Joffrey had made his stance on his wife and lover clear and the two had managed to work out a pseudo-custody arrangement of him, Laenor had softened to little Luke by a startling amount. The babe spent a lot more time with his father and uncle these days. I would be lying if a little bit of jealousy did not burn in me whenever Lena and Joffrey were together, just as Laenor still felt the same. It would take time to ease those feelings, to feel secure in this new paradigm. She did not love him, she had told me, she did not even desire him. She had not bedded him since the ceremony. He was kind to her, he played the father to her sons so well she half wished he was the boy's true father at times. They would lay abed together and talk. She liked that she could say anything to him and he would not judge her, she had insisted. Valerian family politics made my head hurt at times. Still, at least it wasn't Targaryen family politics. Those ended up in continent-spanning barbecues and tears. You seem to be in fine mood recently, Your Grace, said Alice Strong as I sat down at the table where Maris was dealing cards. At the reminder, I struggled not to smile again, struggled not to turn to Lena and see if she had reacted as well. Maris was perceptive enough to spot such a red flag, Felena too. I was less sure about Maria and the Strongs, but I did not know their stances on lovers. Especially lovers of the wrong body type, so to speak, and as such I was keen to keep them from figuring it out. So I dropped my hand to my stomach where the babes were, thankfully, silent for the moment. They were most active in the morning just after I'd awoken or just before I was to sleep. Honestly, if I were a modern mother I'd be taking that as a bad sign. Still, it was nice to lay there for a while and just feel them moving about. It also gave whatever lady slept by my side a little more sleep. I'd been informed by Lena that the truckle bed was extremely uncomfortable and sleep never came easy on it. I'd invited her to sleep next to me and she'd blushed such a deep and fierce red I'd been genuinely afraid she might actually burst a blood vessel or something. I enjoyed her blush, especially when she was genuinely flustered and not feeling guilty that she was. Perhaps I am becoming accustomed to the idea of pregnancy, I said, somewhat truthfully, and Maria beamed at me. I would warrant it wouldn't be long before she asked my leave to marry. 2 pregnancies in the same time frame had her eyeing one of her own. Now that they are moving, I am more excited for the babes. Lucery's sudden fussing gave me an opportunity to glance at her. She had her head bent low, silver ringlets hiding her face from everyone. The tips of her ears gave her away though. She knew precisely why I had been so happy lately. I'd told her as such at every opportunity. The fact that I was more excited for the babes did not mean I wasn't scared out of my mind still. When Joffrey was with Lena, Laenor had started coming to me. He'd curl around me and listen to all my thoughts and fears and soothe them away with murmured reassurances. He'd brush his hands through my hair or wipe away my tears when they fell. And I'd had at least one groveling apology for him acting like an arse when it came to dividing his time between Joffrey and I. Oh. We are so excited ourselves, said Felena, smiling broadly in contrast to her usual solemn nature. She was doing that more often, I'd noted. Ever since I'd approved of Septon Patrek and we'd gone into business together, so to speak. My guards reported seeing off more than a few of these mystery knights and city guard. A word with Harwin had called off the gold cloaks, but not even Joffrey had been able to figure out who was paying the knights. Concerning, given he'd almost certainly ruled out his friend and the ghost of Daemon's influence. I figured. You dote on Lucerys enough, I said with a smile to the boy's mother. Not that he isn't worthy of all the attention he receives. In her arms, the subject of our conversation gave his mother's hair a painful wrench and she grimaced, proud smile fading. Several snickers of amusement sprang up around the table as she attempted to disentangle herself from his grip. He is an adorable babe, enthused Maria as Lena failed to escape and glared at us all with her head at such an angle so that he could no longer properly pull. At times, I said, then leant over to help, prying a few pudgy fingers open. Would you take him? She asked, once she was free. I held my arms out in reply and received a wriggling bundle. Luckily for me, I wore my hair in a braid and Lucerys far preferred my shawl anyway, and unlike some of my ladies, I'd known from the beginning that dangling jewelry would be dangerous to have around him. Thank you, sighed Lena, as he settled in my arms. It's no issue, I said, favoring her with a smile as she massaged her arms. Maria and Sarah immediately bent over to fuss at him. Alice merely pulled a face at her sister's delight, then snuck a peek at Sarah's hand. I rocked him back and forth as my ladies played a few rounds, occasionally cooing to him. I had to admit he'd grown on me these past few weeks. Maybe I was finally getting baby brain, or maybe Laenor's reassurance over my own pregnancy had removed a source of stress. He would be raised alongside my children, I had come to realize. Where I went Lena would inevitably end up, whether it was me or Joffrey she was following, and Lucerys was a package deal. It felt odd to picture this silver-haired boy and my own children playing, so I settled for poking his nose, taunting him as he attempted to seize my finger. Ah, I forgot to mention. Lord Hightower has asked to pay a visit to my father, Maria said as Maris began dealing again. My head snapped up, thoughts of my future forgotten as I focused on the present. Lucerys warbled unhappily at losing my attention. Lord Hightower has been courting your father? I asked sharply and Maria nodded, face grim. You need not worry, Your Grace, he is loyal to you. He made that quite clear, but it was not concerning the Greens, she assured me, but I was still discomfort. I shifted my hold on Lucerys and he began making attempts to pull my mantle off. Did your father tell you what it was regarding? I asked. Father said it was about his opinions on a war for Dorne, she replied. He said Otto was looking for the general view on it to better advise King Viserys. Bullshit, this is part of his play to save the Greens. There was no call for war in Dorne. Why was he so obsessed with something that the Blacks, Greens, and Doves had no desire for? The Warhawks were too small a part for him to be courting surely. Gwaine is no longer in danger, said Lena sourly, he should be gone already. She knew, of course, that he would not leave willingly and that we wanted him to stay long enough to engineer his death. She was her mother's daughter though, at heart, and disliked the cloak and dagger scheming. She'd much rather invite him to speak with Vhagar, a dangerous thing to do in a post-Maegor world. Are you not a fan of Lord Hightower? Asked Maris, any pretense of actually playing the card game put aside for her second greatest love, gossip. Lena gave me a hesitant look and I shrugged. I suppose a marriage to Joffrey had taught her to be extremely careful about what she said to who. It is no secret, Maris. Otto Hightower hates father and the feeling is mutual. When he was hand he tried to block the charter for Spicetown. She sounded so outraged I had to bend my head over Lucerys slightly to hide my amusement. He managed to pull my mantle over his face and then gave startled cry at the sudden darkness. Is it true that Lord Corlys raised his fleet during the Great Council? Asked Sarah as I desperately shushed him. Father would never tell us. He said it was casting aspersions on loyal lords. Daemon and Corlys came close to starting a civil war, yes, I replied, Lucerys successfully calmed. Lord Corlys was full of wrath at having his wife passed over the throne twice. Daemon had coveted the throne even then. He'd wanted Viserys close to it because he would be Viserys' heir in the same way many argued Aegon was Viserys' heir. Not precisely acceptable to say even amongst friends though. Daemon wanted to take his revenge for the loss of Vhagar, I said, finally. Lena blushed at that as my ladies showed confusion. A flicker of amusement ran through me. As you are likely unaware, when a rider dies the closest unbound member of their family is supposed to have the first refusal on their dragon. Technically, I should ride Vhagar. Lena went even redder at that as my ladies tittered, taking the teasing smile on my face to mean I had no hard feelings about the matter. I could not imagine you with each other's dragons, Rhaenyra, said Alice. They suit you both so well. And I could not imagine our situations reversed either. Just think, had Rhaenys ascended to the throne, we would be playing cards with Princess Lena. That got a laugh out of them, even Lena joined in although her blush was very much still present. I would forego the title with happiness. Had mother been made heir she likely would have insisted Laenor and I marry, Lena said firmly, eyes on me. Ah, she was feeling brave today. The knowledge made me feel too big for my skin and restless to boot. She was my attendant tonight but I wanted to send them all away now. I couldn't, of course, so I settled for smiling back. Is that not odd to you? The idea of marrying your brother? Asked Alice and received several warning looks from my other ladies. It was Maria that showed how uncomfortable she was most, but I could see most of them shifting. Incest was the elephant in the room when it came to non-Valyrians. Honestly, the idea made my skin crawl. I had this vague idea of establishing cadet branches but first I had to figure out just how dragon riding worked and there never seemed to be enough time. Then as Lena finally seemed to have formulated an answer to that, I had an idea. Lena had complained of needing something to do, why not put her to work researching dragon lore? In truth, it is. Laenor is my best friend but I could not marry him, she admitted, eyes finding mine again. He is not Ser Joffrey? Asked Sarah, teasing smile lighting up her face. Next to her, her twin adopted a similar smile. No. He is not the one I love, that is very true. Oh, yes, she was very brave today. It was all I could do to keep myself from blushing like a maiden at the insinuation. And you, Rhaenyra? Had your older brother survived? Or if his grace asked you marry Aegon? I blinked at the question, train of thought about Lena thoroughly derailed. Felena had asked, surprisingly, she was normally given to silent judgment and disapproval. If I was told to buy my father there is not much I could do to argue against it. I must admit I'd never willingly choose it, I replied and Felena nodded in acceptance. I noted a few of them unable to hide looks of relief. I could understand that. Nothing weirder than someone you know and like wanting to marry their own brother. We played cards for some time after that and passed Lucerys around to receive fuss. It became an unofficial competition between us all, who could earn the most smiles. Surprisingly, that was Maris. Lena's face was quite the picture as she realized that. Maris also, as usual, won quite a bit of money from us all. Lena, Alice, and Sarah all lost the contents of their coin purses to her, and Maria and Felena came away slightly worse off but not much poorer. I know she's cheating. Still, her skill at gambling and cheating had at least begun benefiting my cause. Her first gambling den had opened in the city, with a few more plans soon depending on how the first was received. Joffrey had made sure she would not be managing them personally and had provided her with a middleman as to better keep an eye on her, but I was given to believe she ran it all the same. Quite professionally, I was told. Well maintained, with just enough cheating by the house to ensure her luckless patrons never got too wealthy off her back. Regardless of her work for Joffrey, the point I'm trying to make is that nobody should ever play cards with her because she cheats. One day, my ladies might just realize this. I'd solidly resisted all of Maris' attempts to draw me in with a Lucerys-based excuse. She knew I knew. It felt like an age before Joffrey came by and collected his son, leaving Lena free for tonight. Soon after, my ladies trailed away too as the evening began drawing in. Lena and I were left alone with the usual card-based detritus Maris tended to leave behind. Are you still intent on sleeping in the truckle bed? I asked. She blushed a deep red in response, earning a chuckle of delight from me. Must you? She asked plaintively as we made our way to my bedroom. You only do it to see me blush. I do. Do you wish me to stop? At that question her blush deepened and she busied herself with finding a nightgown for me. My chuckle became an outright laugh and she shot me a look that promised vengeance, much to my delight. I do not want you to stop, she said finally as I clambered into bed, careful to avoid toppling myself over as I had done frequently in the past. Or pulling a muscle, another thing pregnant women apparently did frequently. Then I shall not, I said in reply, shooting her what I hoped was a cheeky smile. Her answering smile was cheeky in turn, and I was about to ask her what had her so amused when she crawled into bed alongside me, and my question turned into an odd choking sound at her bravery. I slept like a baby that night with her hand resting on my stomach and her breath warm in my ear. The next morning, I awoke to an empty bed and the babes fluttering away in my belly. I was about to start panicking that Lena had gone somewhere to brood, that I had pushed too hard when I was proved wrong. She entered, still in her nightgown and carrying a tray that wafted a heavenly smell through the room. I pushed myself into a sitting position and eyed the bacon, sausage, and eggs that she'd bought me with a sudden hunger. A smile twitched across her face at my immediate reaction. When I was pregnant with Lucerys, the thing I wanted most in the world were Dornish oranges. Mother was of the opinion that they weren't good for the babe, but Alanis disagreed, so I got my oranges, she said, placing the tray down on the bedside table. I wouldn't have traded them for all the gold in Casterly Rock. Oranges would probably be a healthier thing to crave, I mumbled, sleep still making my voice raspy, before snagging some bacon and sighing in pleasure at the satisfaction it brought. Thank you. I want to be useful, Rhaenyra. I do not wish to be a liability anymore, she replied. Then she dropped onto my bed with a sigh. I tried so hard to fix the damage I have done to you. I showed you Lucerys, I made sure you ate well, I tried to get Laenor to do his duty. Oh, that's why you were being so infuriating, I said around a mouthful of bacon. It earned me a glare in turn. I thought I led you astray. I have been informed, repeatedly, that you did that entirely by yourself, but I meant what I said. If I am not your role model, I want to be something. I remembered my little brain wave from yesterday. I have an idea, I said, finally, as I selected the next bit of the fried heaven to attack. Leading on from my lady's absolute horror at the idea of brother husbands. Lena snorted at that. If mother heard them, she'd park Malays atop the Red Keep as a reminder of their places, she said. Rhaenys is a big believer in traditional Targaryen values. Pure blood, dragon ascendancy, and all that, I mused. But it did make me wonder something. Why do we marry to keep the blood pure? Lena stared at me as if I had gone slightly mad. Rhaenyra, it would be disaster if we lost control over our dragons, she cried before lowering her voice. You know as well as I that our power comes from our mounts. And politically it keeps claims within the family, I added, and she rolled her eyes. But here's the thing, Aegon can ride a dragon. He tamed Frost. So can Helena because she tamed Morgul. Lena nodded, looking puzzled, and then her eyes cleared. Oh. You're wondering how much blood is needed. Both of them are half Undul, she exclaimed. I'm half Undul, I informed her dryly. But that is the point I'm getting at. You have dragon blood on both sides but far less on your father's. If we threw Corlys to a dragon, would he be able to tame it? Or do you get your ability to command Vagor solely from Rhaenys? Well, I'm not sure, actually, she said, tapping a finger on her face. You aren't half Undul though, your mother was half Undul. You're a quarter Undul. How dare you? My mother was every inch the Aaron, I laughed, munching on eggy bread. Lena leant past me and stole a sausage, ignoring my look of complete betrayal. You ride Syrax and Lena rides Seasmoke. So I'm not sure if it matters, she said. What does this have to do with me though? I want to know how much Valyrian blood you need to control a dragon. If I can move our family away from the more egregious incest, it would work well towards putting a lot of minds at ease in both the nobility and the faith. I believe Jaehaerys made a mistake when he attempted to justify it so badly, I told her. But also dragons are the source of our power. We lost much in the Doom and we were not that powerful amongst the 40 families to start with. If we are to survive in Westeros, we must know everything about the dragons, everything. Oh, she said finally, frowning. I have a confession to make. And my mood was not terribly improved by an encounter with the ever-smug Otto and his announcement he was now advising Viserys on certain subjects. Like Dorne. Fuck. Nasty bugger, remarked Maris the moment he was out of sight. Maris was very adept at reading between the lines. We'll be well rid of him. Father dislikes him. He says he should collect his son and go back to Old Town, Alice added, fidgeting with her dress. Lionel enjoyed his neutrality, so I was more surprised she'd actually told us than the fact she'd kept silent yesterday. He says he is upsetting the court more than the Blacks and the Greens do. He won't leave. Gwaine is not even his spare, he cares little for him beyond the inn it gives to Viserys' inner circles once again, I retorted as we began our way back to the throne room where Viserys was hearing petitions. Could the man truly be so cold? Asked Alice. You are too innocent. A man cares about his standing in life above all else, snorted Maris, probably remembering her own father's manipulations and the following attempted sacrifice of Roland to get out of the consequences. I can't believe that. My father certainly doesn't. He has given Sarah and I leave to do as we wish. To remain at Rhaenyra's side or seek a marriage, Alice argued. Maris raised an eyebrow at that. He has given the same leave to Harwin and Larys. Our hand is a better man than most, Maris admitted grudgingly. Were my father hand, he'd have been worse than Lord Otto. Truly, Jane insulted the Black brothers when she sent him to them. I winced. Alice didn't have anything to say to that, and so we made it to the throne room with no further interruptions or debates on Westerosi morality. I was starting to dislike coming here without Laenor in tow, mostly because the moment Viserys was finished prodding at my belly, I was swarmed by lords. Annoyingly, I could now clearly see that there was a will for war with Dorne. As I might have predicted had I been paying attention, it was the Stormlanders and Reachman, but some of the Crownlanders, Westermen, and even Rivermen were keen on it. My own loyal lords wanted direction and I found myself at a loss. I hadn't lied to Otto. Dorne was a mess, anti-Targaryen sentiment at an all-time high and dancing on the precipice of a civil war between the painfully young daughter of a popular prince and a proven warrior in said prince's youngest brother. So I stuck to my non-committal answers. Viserys would not allow war with Dorne, surely. It risked the dragon riders most of all. We would be expected to siege castles, to drive back armies, and the Dornish had slain a dragon once before. Joffrey caught me by the arm as I was reassuring Lord Wendwater and steered me away, making his apologies. I was more than a little annoyed but swallowed my anger at the excitement in his shuffling gait. I have a lead, he told me, the moment we had a little privacy. When he saw my confusion, he elaborated. On Mushroom's murder. That definitely got my attention. Tell me everything, I demanded. I finally located the professional that carried out the murder. Or rather, I found what was left of him. He was known enough to the Gold Cloaks that his disappearance raised some alarm. Well known, in fact. I had a brief word with our favorite Strong about him. I doubt any words with Harwin can be brief, but keep going, I said, unable to resist the barb. Well, the assassin was thug by all accounts. A star for 6 in Flea Bottom, but 2 things set him above the others, a certain low cunning and the fact he'd do anything if the price was right. Harwin says his men reported him spending big money after the murder, boasting of a new business opportunity and a lucrative future. His men tried to discover who was paying him, but obviously they did not suspect he was even capable of gaining entry to the keep. They did point me in the direction of one of his associates though. one who was also reportedly flush with cash after the fact as well. I nodded along. Surprise, surprise, after his associate's death he went to ground. In one of my brothels as luck would have it. He used to be one of your father's grooms here in the keep. He agreed to tell me everything in return for a ship to the free cities and a bag of gold. He was hired to make sure the assassin reached one of the outer towers. Joffrey was slightly breathless now. Rhaenyra, they were hired by my friend. That's impossible, I breathed. That would mean Alicent was the one who killed Mushroom. I tried not to feel dread at that admission. Given that Lena merely looked abashed and not overly guilty or scared, I was somewhat reassured. I may already be doing something similar, she admitted after I raised an eyebrow in questioning. It was supposed to be a gift of sorts. For my nieces and nephews. Really? I asked, recalling her trips to Dragonstone and the material I'd liberated from her for Aegon's going-away present. That is very thoughtful of you. I suppose me stealing your research didn't help. I was already done with it by that point, she chuckled then became more serious. I just wonder how wise it was to give him access to it. He may well be your foe one day. Ah, her mother's daughter in more ways than one. He is my brother now. Kindness may cause him to hesitate to fall to cruelty later, I said, diplomatically. She regarded me for a good long time then. Might I ask you a question? She asked finally. You do not need to answer. I know I am not. I am not the one you would trust unconditionally. I hope that will come in time, but I do not wish to upset or unsettle you. Ask away. I cannot think of anything you could ask that would upset me, I told her, taking pity as she floundered to find the right words. A long time ago, Laenor thought you could see the future. He said you knew things you should not. I thought it was odd. I thought he was coming up with reasons to avoid you. Then when we visited the Wisdoms, you said that you wrote that book. She started and I wanted to groan, tensing without meaning to. Oh, you don't want to talk about it. And she'd spotted it. Damn. No. I do, it would be good to clear the air, but I would prefer Laenor and Joffrey present. At my lack of explosion or immediate shutdown of the conversation she sighed in relief. It is a long and complicated topic. I fear you will not think well of me afterwards. I fear you will need someone to talk to. She regarded me for a long time and then nodded. Might I ask? If you could see the future, if Laenor were right, might you have seen something in mine had I gone with Daemon? She asked, tone careful. I might have, I replied, and her eyes went wide before narrowing. I might have seen children. Happiness for a while. And then death. A cruel one. I see, she said finally, after mulling that over for a while. We sat in silence for a while as I ate. The kids were active that morning, fluttering away. Truly, I was dreading the home stretch, so to speak. When they would be large enough to distinctly kick and punch. I had been told that it could hurt, and Lena's experiences only seemed to back that up. Eventually my eyes drifted closed, almost against my will. I will work on your dragon lore, Rhaenyra, said Lena, interrupting my half-doze. I forced my eyes open to stare at her in surprise, and she smiled, placing a hand on my stomach. I'll make sure the little ones know everything they need to know about dragons. I'll be the second coming of Septon Barth should you need me to be. Thank you. If you need any permissions for the library in Dragonstone - a yawn forced me to cut that sentence off. Don't hesitate to ask. With that problem out of the way, we lay together for a little while longer. Then I made to get up and she chided me about not sleeping enough, and we ran through the usual routine I had with any of my ladies. Alice and Maris arrived soon after to relieve her, and she left me to them, off to check on her son and ensure he was fed. My feet took me to court eventually, with my ladies in tow and ready to enforce bed rest at the slightest issue. Again, I struggled not to rant and rage at the cotton wool everyone wanted to wrap me in. I could understand it. The heirs were very important, but I'd had quite enough of being babied. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.